Does Nebraska have a depth problem at the cornerback position heading into the summer? We discuss next.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. That's your team every day. Also, these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply.
Okay, good morning, Connor. How are you? Mitch Sherman here. Connor Happer is with me.
I'd say very good. I would say good. Ready to roll for this week.
All right. So something happened on Friday that got just a bit of attention, kind of buried in other recruiting news. Nebraska updated its roster on Huskers.com, and Ethan Nation was not on it, along with 6 walk-ons who were not significant roster pieces. None were on the 115 projection that I put out after the spring season on The Athletic. So Ethan Nation, though, was on that list. And you might say, hey, Nebraska's got 20 defensive backs on scholarship, still more than 20, even with his departure. But he was a highly regarded freshman last year who played in 7 games. They thought enough of him to keep him from redshirting. And I think I can officially say that Nebraska is getting thin at the cornerback position. So this, to me, is a concern. Is it a concern that people should be paying attention to?
Yeah, so I said at the beginning, do they have a depth issue? I mean, they're very close to having like a, just a general issue. I mean, I don't think it's just depth, because I mean, you look at the position, it's supposed to be Tommi Hill and Bly Hill. And Nebraska's not going to have Bly Hill for at least a giant swath of the season at this point. So
yeah, early he'll be out of training camp, so it's tough to just jump right back in and play in September when you haven't practiced.
So you can't 100% count on that. I'm not necessarily putting him aside, but it's not something that you can count on at least at the early portion of the season. And I just to like sidebar here, I guess like. I'm mildly uncomfortable still with the idea of like Tommi Hill being the lockdown number 1 corner. Like I think we're just kind of putting that to the side, maybe a hair too early. I mean that's a side topic that we could discuss as well. And then outside of that, we're talking about freshmen and redshirt freshmen. I mean that's pretty much where you're at unless you move Malcolm Hartzog back to the position full time, which I would imagine Nebraska might look into considering their depth situation. So, I mean, it is a legit concern for Nebraska's defense. This is where you're going to find out if you're going to be able to, get guys in there quickly. Fortunately, that is a position where you can, and, college football history has shown that you can play those defensive backs a little bit early. But yeah, I mean, it's absolutely a concern, I'd say right now.
Yeah. So what you have, if you're in Nebraska, other than Tommi Hill, is legitimately no experience at the corner spot without Ethan Nation. And he had very limited experience, but he was somebody that was in the plans. And we don't know what the situation is. I asked on Friday, and the response from Nebraska was he's not on the roster. And like, yes, I can see that he's not on the roster, but so there was no further explanation. Unsure if it's a disciplinary thing, if it's, the grass is greener. He's going to end up in the portal. It's an odd time to leave the team because you can't go in the transfer portal right now unless you're a graduate, which he obviously is not as a player who's been in school for 1 year. So he's going to have to sit for a while. And perhaps some more clarity will come out from Matt Rhule as we get further into the summer, but it doesn't look like he's going to be a part of things, or he wouldn't be removed from the roster in that way. So Jeremiah Charles is a guy that they love because of his athleticism, but he played receiver for a good chunk of the 2023 season while redshirting, and is a raw athlete. I mean, he can jump. We've seen he can jump through the roof. I mean, he's
He
a
won the
long
dunk
jumper,
contest.
triple jumper. He won the dunk contest. Like, jumping is not an issue. He's tall. He will make a great corner someday. But when is that day?
It's
Mario
early.
Buford he comes in as somebody who I think they believe is more ready than most players out of high school. He's from DeSoto, Texas, which is a big time program in Dallas, and he might be able to help you right away as a true freshman. Was an early enrollee, was here in the spring. He's got a brother, Marquise, who's in the program, and Mario has been learning about college football through the brotherly connection for quite a while. And there's Dwight Boodle, who's also the brother of a football player, an ex-Husker, DiCaprio Boodle. And Dwight Boodle was highly regarded as he came into Nebraska last fall, and then suffered a knee injury three games into the season. So he's also in rehab mode like Bly Hill. So other than that, there's no one who's been in the program. I mean, you're talking about like Roger Gradney, who just got to Lincoln last week with the late enrolling freshman, and some players that are in a similar spot and just have no college experience.
Yeah, I mean, maybe and Nebraska's obviously not been afraid to do this under Matt Rhule. Maybe a wide receiver can jump over there, or a guy who that'll by the way, that's going to sort itself out too when we get to camp. There will be a couple guys that pop up and are like, oh, I thought he was an offensive lineman and he's a defensive lineman, or vice versa. Oh, I thought he was a wide receiver, he's a defensive back. So I think that'll happen. I would probably expect that, a time or two in this room, especially given the more of a certainty Nebraska has at the top of the wide receiver position at this point as it compares to the corner position. So that's something I guess to kind of watch out for there. But yeah, it's an issue. And so that's where you start you have to think, at least you have to really entertain the idea of bringing in somebody, I think, this summer. And I think Nebraska felt like they were in a good spot when they brought in Bly Hill as part of the transfer class here. But I mean, I don't know what's out there for you at the moment in terms of a market for a guy, but I think Nebraska's got a pretty good pitch, because they say, hey, look, you can come in and you're probably going to compete for playing time pretty much right away, given what we have at the moment. So
there's a postgraduate camp that's happening today on campus, Monday, June 10th, on campus in Lincoln. The camps started on Friday with the Friday Night Lights, and then there were some team camps through the weekend, and we'll talk a little bit more about the camps in the next segment. Some offers went out, but this post-grad one is interesting because this is open to players who are in the transfer portal, and there are a number of players out there who went in the portal in the spring period in April and have yet to find homes. And it's also a spot where you can find a junior college player. Nebraska got James Williams out of a post-grad camp last year, and he was the junior college defensive lineman who turned himself into a player and went from scout team to pass rushing specialist by the end of last season. So maybe there's a corner who just shows up in Lincoln at a post-grad camp today and gets a scholarship offer. That would be a real development, a significant development for Nebraska, if you can somehow find something like that from a JUCO guy or a D1 player who's in the portal. Because if not, I think corner depth for me goes to the top of my list of concerns about what's going on with Tony White's group in 2024.
Yeah, and you could always, as you look at the defense in its entirety, I mean, if you're weaker in one area, you're going to have to be stronger in other areas, and that puts more pressure on some of the better parts of Nebraska's defense, like the defensive line as well. So it's really interesting, and I think what Tony White and any defensive coordinator hopes is that you don't have to scheme up. I mean, he's even talked about this. He talked about it recently. Like, you don't have to scheme too much up. You don't have to send too many guys at the quarterback in order to protect your defensive backfield, from getting beat down the field. Hopefully you could just guard them kind of 11 on 11, but we'll see. And Nebraska might have to scheme some stuff up. While we have a minute here, Mitch, I do want to ask you about the Tommi Hill thing that I brought up a little bit earlier. You were kind of shaking your head a little bit. How do you feel about that? I think that's kind of like an under talked about, part of this team. We have Tommi Hill. The coaches talk about him in such a glowing way. We set him to the side. It's like, yeah, that's your number one kind of lockdown corner. And that is definitely not how I have thought about him and his football playing career at Nebraska.
Okay, so yeah, I was shaking my head because I think this is a future podcast episode this summer, and it's going to be titled.
All right, we'll hold it.
Don't jump to conclusions about X. And yeah, one of those things that I would not jump to a conclusion about is that Tommi Hill is going to be an all Big Ten caliber corner. Now, he has that kind of athleticism, and the Nebraska coaches have talked about him like he can be that kind of a player. But that's, Tommi Hill has shown through his career in transferring from, the Pac-12 to Nebraska he was a highly rated player out of high school, and it didn't work for him. Arizona State? Yes, I believe it was Arizona State where he started his career. And then he came to Nebraska, and it was slow to get going. And Matt Rhule's staff worked with him to figure out whatever the issues were that were holding him back. And I think the main thing that they did was just believe in him like people hadn't believed in him for a long, long time. He's gotten to where he is because of his incredible athleticism. One of the fastest guys, if not the fastest guy on this team. But there were more pieces that had to come into play before he was ready to get out there on the field and play with the kind of confidence that you need at corner. And they instilled that in him. But it hasn't happened over a long period of time. Like, this is still relatively new for him. And now he goes into the spot where he's your number one corner. They had Quentin Newsome last year to fill that role. So yeah, I'm with you in that I'm not certain that he's someone you can count on. That isn't a part of the roster that you can just say, I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about Tommi Hill.
Yep. All right. After the break. So that's a good note. We'll save that for a future podcast episode, or at least an idea for it. We'll come back. We'll talk a little bit about the camp circuit. The Nebraska kicked off their Friday Night Lights camps. They've been all over the country. There's some quarterback offers that were going out. We'll get into those details a little bit. They also got a commitment over the weekend. We'll get into those details next. First, a reminder to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at LockedOnNEB, or X, I suppose. You can email us, lockedonneb@gmail.com. We'll be back after this.
Quick break here to tell you about LinkedIn. When you are hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals who are right for the role. That's why you need to check out LinkedIn Jobs. It has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team, fast and for free. LinkedIn is not just a job board. It helps you hire professionals who you can't find anywhere else, even those who are not actively searching for a new job. In a given month, more than 70% of LinkedIn users, this is what they tell me, do not visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. 86% of small businesses on LinkedIn get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, welcome back. This is where we usually have a second for our quick 10-second Royals catch up. Thumbs up. 2 out of 3 is good, and a 10-run or a 8-run comeback is nice as well.
Truly enjoyed the Friday night game. That's one that would have been fantastic to attend, being down 7-0 in the first inning and then winning.
A lot of baseball this weekend, Mitch. I assume you look a little sunburned, maybe again.
It's all just no. I'm good. I'm good. Just got the summer color going. I don't feel any burn. It's just a baseball coach look right now. You don't want to see the farmer's tan, so I will not show it to you. But yep, lots of baseball this weekend. Didn't get rained out on Sunday, so I wasn't raging at anyone on Twitter.
Nice.
Happy with the results. Kids played well. Made it to a championship game and played a good baseball game. So also a lot of college baseball that I was watching this weekend. Did you happen to catch Cam Cannarella with the 10th inning catch in the Clemson Florida game of the
did.
Super Regional in South Carolina.
I did. He hit the home
Was
run.
it the best catch you've ever seen?
I mean, that little jump, I don't know why he did that or where that came from, but that added to the effect of it by a million. I mean, that was awesome.
Uh-huh.
And then Clemson still ended up losing the game, but yeah, it was great.
Yeah, that was he turned the wrong direction, which added to the degree of difficulty.
Yeah.
And he was playing shallow, so he had to run forever. I'm sad now that we don't get to meet Cam Canarella in Omaha. After the home run that he hit in the 9th, and then that catch, I wanted to see him in Omaha. I wanted to talk to him about that, but maybe next year. I believe he's a 2025 like first round draft prospect. So one more year, we can hope to get Clemson to Omaha and meet him at Charles Schwab Field. We'll talk a little more college baseball and like how it might affect Nebraska and the Big Ten, what's going on this month in the sport in the third segment. But for now, we want to talk a little bit about camps in Lincoln and what happened for Nebraska this weekend. First, there was the big German offensive lineman that Nebraska picked up in Texas early in the week. We discussed that in depth on Friday on the show. So if you haven't listened or watched, go check that out. Huskers returned home for Friday Night Lights on Friday, surprisingly, under the lights. Actually, it was inside under the lights at the Hawks Championship Center, and put out a couple of offers to young quarterbacks. So Jamison Purcell from Illinois, he's a 2027 prospect. And then Ace Amina out of Las Vegas Bishop Gorman. He's a 2028 prospect. So that means that Ace just finished 8th grade, but he's got an offer from Nebraska football.
Congratulations on finishing 8th grade, Ace. Nice job. But Bishop Gorman, that's a factory. And I don't know. This is just some of what you get. The quarterback cycle has just, it has just gone way, way fast. And we've seen offers go out to 6th graders and stuff like that before. So I shouldn't be surprised, or I shouldn't roll my eyes anymore. So the quarterback cycle has just moved way, way fast at this point in time.
I saw a photo of Ace Amina, the future Bishop Gorman quarterback. Wouldn't be the Bishop Gorman quarterback yet, since he has not yet attended Bishop Gorman as a 2028 prospect. But he doesn't look like a lot of the 8th graders that I've seen running around the Omaha metro area. There's a few. There's that age. If they're playing sports, they can look like they're 12 years different in age and be the exact same age, because some of them have been through puberty and others weigh 101 pounds and celebrate on the scale because they've gotten into triple digits. And I speak from experience in my own home with one who's 13 and is working on that milestone.
Yeah. I remember kids in 8th grade, like, oh, wow, you got some like facial hair going there. Like what's going on? Nobody else has that. So what else happened on the camp circuit this weekend?
Well, as I said, it was Friday Night Lights. You're going to have more Friday Night Lights going on this coming week. Dayton Raiola is coming to town this coming Friday, so we'll see the Raiola crew. I'm sure Dylan will be out there watching younger brother. Dayton is going to be a junior at Buford High School in Georgia, where Dylan played this last year. Let's see what else happened. Pierce Mooberry, the athlete, linebacker. Is he a linebacker?
Yeah, I would say so. Linebacker.
Yeah, out of Millard North, committed to Nebraska. He's had an offer for quite a while, so that's now commit number 9 for the Huskers in the 2025 cycle. A bunch of other offers went out to 26 and 27 players. A couple from South Dakota got offers on Sunday. We're going to see this continue as Nebraska's recruiting class grows over the month of June. It's interesting. I want to bring it back to quarterbacks a little bit. When Dylan was offered by Nebraska, he was the same age as Jamison Purcell, the Illinois QB who got the offer, and just a year older than Ace Amina. He just finished his freshman year of high school in Texas when he came to a Friday Night Lights camp at Nebraska and got that offer. So, we can kind of chuckle a little bit at these 14-year-olds and 15-year-olds who get offered, but it's happening all over the country, and it's a big part of the reason that Nebraska's projected to be a big player in college football this year, like an improving team, because its quarterback, who's the talk of many people's conversations about Nebraska football, was first targeted by Nebraska before he took a varsity snap in high school.
I would say, yeah, that's just where like the top guys who are going to end up being the high 4-star and the 5-star guys are going to be identified at a very early age, because that, I mean, the cycle has moved up, as I've mentioned, but also now you're getting the quarterbacks who have gone out to the camp circuits and they've been seen by coaches, and they've already begun to develop relationships as early as Ace Amina has, and we're talking about 8th grade, we're talking about 9th grade. So by the time that you actually start a varsity game at wherever you're at, assuming you're going to one of those quarterback factories around the country or high school football factories around the country, because you're kind of in that world and in that game, you're going to be known by the time you even take a varsity snap or be the starting varsity quarterback. I mean, it's amazing where it's kind of ended up in that regard.
It is interesting to kind of contrast it to what's going on the local scene, because the state of Nebraska is now producing Power 5 quarterbacks, and has for the last 2 to 3 recruiting cycles. And there's a couple more who are coming up in the Omaha metro area, but don't yet have Nebraska offers. I'm talking about Jet Tamala, the 2026 quarterback. He's an old guy, 2026, man, at Millard South. He's got teammates who have Nebraska offers, and some of them were at camp in Lincoln in these first few days. But Jet Tamala is waiting on his first Power 5 offer. He's going to get it.
Yeah.
He's a guy that reminds me of what Zane Flores from Gretna went through, where he had to wait until his senior year to get offered, or late in his junior year actually to get offered. And then Braylon Warren at Omaha West Side, who's a 2027. He just finished his freshman year at West Side, son of Steve Warren, of Nebraska football fame, NFL fame, Warren Academy. Excuse me. Braylon just picked up an offer from Iowa State. So things are starting to happen for Braylon Warren on the local, as far as the local guys on the recruiting scene at the quarterback position.
Quick check-in on, like you said, Mitch, the Omaha 8 that are coming up starting on Friday, and how it relates back to Nebraska baseball a little bit when we return and finish out a Monday edition of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. But first, if you're watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all of the shouting, make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, it is winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL, both of the finals and those sports going on right now. FanDuel is here for you, and it's giving you a shot to bring home the big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Once again, $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. So pick a team to win a side in either one of these series that are going on right now, whether it's the Stanley Cup Finals or the NBA Finals. And if you win that single bet, a player prop in any of those games, either you win that single bet, it's $150 to spend on what you may have left. Now, I don't know that either of these series are long for the running here, so I'd probably get on this pretty shortly. $150 to use in the rest of the series, like spreads and money lines and player props and more. FanDuel.com/lockedons is where you head and make every playoff shot count. That's with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
Okay, back for a final segment on this Monday in June, second Monday in June. I want to frame this in the context of Nebraska baseball, but also in the context of the Big Ten and college sports at large, because I think what we saw this past weekend, Connor, in the super regionals of college baseball is a little bit of a warning sign about where college sports are headed on a national level. And I'm not just talking about baseball. I'm talking about football, basketball, whatever it might be. So looking at the tickets punched to the College World Series, and you and I both will be busy starting this week with things that are happening in downtown Omaha. Here's who is coming to Omaha: Virginia, Florida State, North Carolina, Florida, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Texas A&M. And then there's a game today on Monday between Georgia and NC State that will determine the final spot. What do you notice about that group of teams?
I noticed that they only hail from 2 conferences, which is unbelievable. The ACC, in basketball they have like the Big Ten ACC Challenge or whatever.
Yes.
This is just the ACC SEC Challenge, I suppose. As we start this weekend in Omaha, and I don't want to look like, because I think there will be a lot made of that this week and obviously throughout the first few days of the World Series, but I don't know that it's that different from what it's been. Obviously, I mean, we were a game away from having Evansville in the College World Series, and that would have been a huge story in and of itself. And Oregon State was in a super regional, but the Pac-12 obviously is no more. It's the first time since our play-by-play guy John Bishop had the stat last night. I think it's since 1948, and that was when the field was only 2 teams, that only 2 conferences were represented in the College World Series. So it's never happened before. It's kind of crazy to think about that way. But I don't know. I mean, you look at it next year, I'm sure TCU will probably show back up, or somebody from the North will make some sort of run. UConn's been in a super now for the 2nd consecutive year. Oregon was in a super for the 2nd, or I guess UConn was in it 2 out of 3. Oregon is in a super for 2 out of 3. So I don't know. It's just what we ended up with this year.
Can you believe that like these big SEC bullies just keep on knocking the Cinderellas out of the running? Like, I mean, Texas A&M. Think about what Texas A&M did over the previous 2 weeks. Like these poor little sad programs like Texas and Oregon that are just trying to get by and just trying to do what they can do to, represent their schools in a good way. And Oregon could have sent out the Pac-12, and it could have been this nice Cinderella story. I mean, Texas is in the Big 12. They're leaving the Big 12 to go to the SEC, but they're still in the poor little Big 12. No, Texas A&M just swept them away. I mean, big mean Trev Alberts is out there doing his thing. We can't even get these great stories like Texas and Oregon to get to Omaha. It's got to be A&M. And my sarcasm, my point is that, like, even if it's not all SEC, ACC, it's still a sport that's just dominated by the money and by the power. So because we don't have like a Big 12 team, or, last year Oral Roberts was a good story out of the Summit League. Okay, they didn't win the national championship. I mean, Fresno State did about 15 years ago, but these things are almost always just overrun by SEC and ACC programs. Look, if you're in the new Big 12 without Texas and Oklahoma, or you're in the Big 10, even now with Oregon and USC and UCLA, Washington coming in, you're still fighting. You're fighting an uphill battle. Like, college baseball is just, and it's going to be football. With the football, you take the ACC out of the equation and you put the Big 10 in their spot. Yeah, there's good ACC football teams like Florida State and Clemson, but how long are they going to be in the ACC? So this is just where we're headed. This is the reality. This is what the powers that be wanted for college sports. We're seeing it. Omaha may be the beginning of the new frontier in the College World Series this week, with a sport that's just completely dominated by a couple of leagues. And, I heard Will Bolt, Nebraska's coach, say before the Huskers went to regionals that there's more parity than ever in college baseball because, and this was his explanation for like why Nebraska had some midweek struggles this year and, wasn't running away with the big whatever. LSU was struggling. Florida was struggling, although they're in the CWS. Man, parity, there's no, like, the good teams are good and there's parity in the big conferences, but like there's less parity than ever when it comes to the overall power structure.
The only hope, would be the Big Ten with its infinite amount of money deciding that it wanted to invest in baseball, and the schools coming together and deciding that it wanted to invest in baseball. And maybe there's a window of opportunity, like I said, because they're so far out in front from a money perspective, and the new West Coast flair is coming into the conference. Spoiler alert, guys, it ain't happened. The Big Ten is not going to care about baseball. They are not going to put its extra resources that they have received from the TV networks like Fox to put into getting better at baseball and being competitive at baseball. It ain't happening. It's all going to go back into football and trying to gain advantages there. So, yeah, this is what you're going to see. The SEC has built-in advantages, and they have advantages from that they have built in and of themselves out of competitiveness, inner competitiveness within their own conference. Kentucky, as a program that has never been in the College World Series before now, and they just what happened to Kentucky? They just decided to be good because they put money into it, and everybody else around them was already spending the money, and they went into it as well. So, I mean, it could happen in the Big Ten, but it ain't going to.
Yeah. Somebody remarked to me, final thought, that they ought to just move this thing to Atlanta, because who cares? It's Omaha. And I could not disagree more. Omaha is the College World Series. We don't want it to go anywhere. We like the Big Ten or whatever conference it might be, the Big East, the American Athletic Conference. I mean, when you go back and look through the history of the teams that have played in the College World Series, it's amazing some of the just the small little programs that made it in the early years. But that's an era of college sports that's long, long gone. But we'll embrace it, and the people of Omaha will have a good time celebrating with everyone from the ACC and the SEC.
Yep, a lot of jealous shots on tap for Kentucky fans this week.
No Cinderella.
No Cinderella. All right. We bid you adieu here on a Monday, but first, the Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and it's available also on the Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every league. Find Locked On Sports Today. It is now available on the free Fire TV channels app.